In this video, I want to talk about buying fish food in bulk and why it might not always be the best choice, and why some calculations may be needed before you go ahead and buy some of your fish food in bulk. So a lot of us look into this option when keeping multiple fish tanks or even just one fish tank, and you don't want to just keep buying small quantities of fish food. You want to save a little money, maybe make less trips to the store or make less Amazon orders, and you just want to buy a large quantity of fish food all at once. Now, this is all well and good, but one thing that people sometimes overlook is the fact that fish food, similar to our food, does have expiration dates. Now, fish food is designed, it's manufactured in a way that it has a very long shelf life, a lot longer than a lot of the foods we eat. And the expiration dates aren't necessarily as strictly scrutinized and regulated as our foods, but most fish foods do have an expiration date printed on there. And a lot of times it'll be a few years out. If you buy a food in 2020, the expiration date might be 2023, maybe even 2024. 2 to 4 years is not uncommon for shelf life of a big, bulk purchase of fish food. And a lot of times, fish food won't necessarily expire in the same way our food does. Most times, it kind of just dries out. It appears to be the same. The fish will still probably eat it for the most part, but it kind of dries out. And the biggest thing is it loses its nutritional value. A lot of the nutrients in it over time, once you start getting close to that expiration date or passing that expiration date, a lot of the nutrients that are in that food, maybe the reason you bought that food was for these great nutrients. You're looking over the ingredient list. You want your fish to have great color, great health, great growth rates, there's a high protein level in your food. A lot of those great nutrients that you may be going after start to break down over time. And if you're going to be pushing it past the expiration date or close to the expiration date, you're really losing a lot of that nutritional value that's in the food. And that could be, for you, the reason why you bought that food in the first place. And the longer you're opening and closing this big bag of fish food that's taking you forever to get through, the more chances that moisture could accidentally end up in there, or some bugs could get a foothold in there and they could start breeding in there. You could get some mold growing in there. It could get soggy, it could get smelly, all sorts of stuff like that. Is at a much greater risk when you're working with a really big bag of fish food that's going to take you a long time to get through. Now, will fish eat fish food that's stale and kind of dried out a bit? Not moldy, not covered in bugs, but just, most of our fish foods, it gets a little drier over time once you get to the expiration date. Will fish still eat it? The answer is yes, but I have noticed, at least in my fish, and I know a bunch of other people can attest to this too, they may not like the food as much. I buy some foods that come in pretty fresh. They're not moist, but you can tell kind of they're softer and kind of have a little more hydration when I first get the food, and over time they kind of dry out, they get harder. And I've noticed my fish don't readily finish as much of it as they used to. I find more of it left over the next day. So if you're watching this video, maybe you're thinking about buying fish food in bulk, or maybe you already did buy fish food in bulk and you're realizing you have the same problem that I do. And I'm telling you I have this problem because you can see all this food in front of me here. And I have 9 aquariums that are stocked with plecos, and they're not super heavily stocked. And I've fallen victim to this over the years, and I'm finally kind of wising up to it that, you don't buy more than you can feed in the expiration dates. I mean, I have some bags of food here that I've had since I started this whole fish room 3 years ago, and I've barely made a dent on them. Before you go out and spend $100 on, a couple of pounds of fish food, you have to make some calculations. Otherwise, you run the risk of all the things I mentioned, your food's nutritional value degrading over time and your fish enjoying the food less and getting less nutrients from it. Higher risks of mold and insects and mites, and your food drying out and expiring before you can use it all. So what can you do about this? So the first step is going to be figuring out how much your fish are eating on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Now, if you've been keeping the fish long enough, you have a general idea of how much they eat each day. For me, it's that little white scoop that I was showing you inside that Ziploc bag of fish food. I feed each one of my aquariums roughly one of those scoops worth of food each evening. So for the purpose of this, we'll call that 1 ounce. Now that's, completely just making that up, but we'll say that scoop is 1 ounce. And how could you figure that out? Figure out roughly how much you're feeding each one of your tanks each day, whether you have a different shaped scoop or a little spoon you use or a pinch. take that amount and put it on a scale and find out how much that weighs to get the weight of, the average weight that you're feeding each tank each day. So for this, I'm feeding each tank 1 ounce each night. So that's 1 times 9 tanks. I'm using 9 ounces of food each night. Multiply that for the week, that's 63 ounces of food for the week. And if you want to multiply that by 52 to go for 52 weeks of the year, I'm using 3,276 ounces of food a year. So if I'm going to buy food in bulk, I should really strive to use everything I bought within the first year to keep it fresh. I mean, it probably has an expiration date that's, maybe 3, maybe even 4 years out, but I want to use it all in the first year while it's still super fresh. And if you're like me and many other fish keepers who like to feed a variety of fish foods so that you can give your fish the most wide array of nutrients possible to keep them healthy as they would in the wild, they'd have a lot of different food choices. They wouldn't be eating the same exact thing every single day. If that's the case, then you're going to want to split up that large number that you came up with between different foods. So if I've determined I want to use all my food in the first year, and in 1 year, I'm predicted to use 3,276 ounces, I got to buy 3,276 ounces worth of food in different, volumes. So I can maybe buy 500 ounces of one food, 600 ounces of one food, 800 ounces of another. It all has to add up to 3,276 if my goal is to use it all within 1 year. Now, these are the calculations I wasn't doing when I first started the hobby. I would buy a big bag of fish food and just think it's going to last forever. It doesn't really expire. And then as time goes on, I start to learn more and more that, if I'm letting my food get really stale, my fish are picking at it a lot less. I'm finding more the next morning that wasn't eaten and got like fungused over and stuff like that in the tank. And it's not the quality of food that I had purchased anymore. It has degraded so much now that I kind of wasted my money and I end up throwing it away. Like this video you see here, all these ones I have laid out, I'm throwing away half of these after this video. This was kind of like my food clean out video before I start throwing some of these away that I know I'm not going to use and I know have kind of been on the shelf for too long and have been opened and exposed to the air for too long. So my biggest word of advice is if you are maybe just getting into the hobby, setting up one tank or maybe even setting up a whole fish room, don't go big right away. Don't buy in bulk right away. Buy small. Buy a small amount and kind of feel it out and figure out how much your fish are going to eat each day. What's the right amount where you're not overfeeding, not underfeeding. And then once you know that amount, you can weigh it out and kind of calculate it. Take that into account and then multiply that number so that you can, buy enough food that you can go through it all in the first 6 months, the first year. That's up to you what that threshold looks like. I like 1 year. I feel like that's a good point where it's still fresh, but I'm not going super quick. Like 6 months, it feels a little too quick for me. I like to buy a little more infrequently like that. So buying one bulk order annually kind of is sufficient for me. But make those calculations. Don't be afraid to buy small at first until you can make your calculations and then go big once you have that right number in mind. But anyways, that's going to wrap up this video. If you found it helpful in any way, hit that like button down below. And if you're new to my channel and you want to see lots of great aquarium and fish room content just like this, hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you for watching.